Hey everybody, I'm Allison Morris, business reporter for Fox 5 News, introducing something brand new to you, the Fox 5 Podcast Network. My podcast is called Morris on Money. Makes sense. And we're going to be talking about things that I think are awesome and important, like money, real estate, investing, brands, your finances, you name it. We're going to get into all of that so you have a better understanding of your money. Knowledge is power, so let's get started.
From New York City, USA, welcome to the Fox 5 Podcast Network.
I want all women to be financially literate and to be able to stand on their own 2 feet and take care of themselves without a man.
This is the Morris on Money podcast with Fox 5 business reporter Allison Morris.
Hey guys, welcome to the Morris on Money podcast. I'm your host, Allison Morris, and our guest today is the wonderful and talented Carrie Carbonaro. She is a certified financial planner and also the author of an amazing book, The Money Queen's Guide for Women Who Want to Build Wealth and Banish Fear. Carrie, thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me, Allison. So excited to be here.
So let's start talking about the book because I think this is such an essential for women. Tell me what The Money Queen's Guide is all about.
So really, it's an empowering book for women to own their own financial future. I want all women to be financially literate and to be able to stand on their own 2 feet and take care of themselves without a man.
Why did you write this book? And I know I'm asking this, it's kind of, I know the answer to this, but I'm asking because I know it came from a real personal experience.
Yes. So it was interesting. I went through an absolutely horrible divorce where I almost lost everything. Everything that I had and worked for. I was an independent woman before my marriage. I was an independent woman during my marriage. And I still went through quite a severe divorce where he sued me for all my net worth, my business, and alimony. And so I wound up, it took me 4 years to get through it. I spent all of my emergency fund, hundreds of thousands of dollars in attorney's fees, not including what I had to pay him to get out of the marriage. And I said, you know what? I don't want any woman to have to go through this. And the fact that I had to go through this is proof that anybody can go through this. So I wanted to write a story first about my divorce and then second about what I've seen in my 20 plus year career with my clients about what women should be doing about money and what they don't do about money. And so I sort of combined the two.
So let's start with talking to women a little bit about the divorce situation because, I know a long time ago there was concern that, you should get a prenup because the men have all the money. But hello, this is 2017. Women are working. We're making a ton of money ourselves. Yes. What should you do, even if you are blissfully in love, before you get married so that you don't end up going through a really costly and potentially financially damaging divorce?
Right. Well, it's funny because I think a prenup definitely helps. And it's interesting. So in my case, if I look back and say, why didn't I get a prenup? Well, and what's interesting is first of all, nobody ever wants to bring up the subject, but it's actually the best time to bring up the subject if you're madly in love.
It's so touchy.
Yes. And what happens is, and I've actually like mediated a couple of prenups for clients, and what happens is, let's say one spouse is significantly higher than the other spouse, either in income or net worth. That is when it's needed. The net worth, the prenup is absolutely needed. If you guys are equal or going to be equal or even Steven or, both have the same earning potential, then it's not needed as much because you should be able to just split everything 50-50 if the worst case situation happens. It's when it's super unequal that it's really, really needed.
Yeah.
And interestingly, in my case, the way it was presented to me when I got married was that he had so much more than me. So why would I ever get a prenup?
Ugh.
How do you like that?
Hello. That is not what happened at all.
Right.
The funny thing is, Carrie, too, because I feel like I'm thinking about people I know, people I've spoken with, and a man would never be afraid to say to a woman, we need a prenup because I either have assets or earning potential or my family has something I want to keep in my family. I don't know a single female friend of mine who has said, no, I want a prenup. Why are we so afraid to do it? And is there a right and a wrong way to go about it?
it's funny. Well, first of all, I think that we're so afraid because we don't, maybe we're so happy that we're in love and we're, getting married, and, we don't want to upset the apple cart. And I think it will be perceived very negatively. Or in most cases, most women think it will be perceived negatively.
Yep.
They might even think that the husband might not want to marry them.
Yep.
If they bring up the prenup idea, and in the best or the right or the wrong way, in my opinion, I would have somebody else bring it up and you not bring it up, like maybe somebody from the family, or maybe an advisor, somebody like myself. Like if I was an advisor to my clients and they said to me, could you bring up the prenup discussion? That's a perfect role for me.
Yep.
To have somebody else do it so that you don't have to do it is another great suggestion, I think, of a right way to do it.
This is hysterical. We're going to air this podcast and you're going to get calls from all these people. Hi, Carrie, can I hire you to tell my husband or my fiance that I need a prenup? But, it is a sensitive conversation. I will never forget two things. One, when I first met my husband and we were all, lovey-dovey and meeting each other, I got this envelope in the mail from my dad. I was living in Pittsburgh at the time. My dad's a CPA. And I get this envelope in the mail, and it's a Wall Street Journal, like a Sunday edition article talking about how most divorces happen because of finances and how most married couples don't talk about their finances before it gets really serious. And I was thinking, gee, thanks, Dad. Like, I was just enjoying dating the guy,
Exactly. Well, and that's another whole story, because I think before you even get married, besides the prenup, like let's say you're like 20s or 30s and you don't have any assets yet, which could be the case. Maybe you have debt. Maybe you have, two people who have student loan debt and nothing else. That at that point, it's you're still thinking, I don't know if I need a prenup. You probably don't if you don't have any assets, because that's really what it is. It's to protect your assets. But when you have, for example, let's say you're getting married and you're in your 20s or 30s, you still need to actually figure out where you guys are financially, if you are on the same page. So like, for example, in my book, one of the things we talk about is like your money mind, which is, findyourmoneymind.com, which is a free thing that my company offers. And you figure out, how you think about money. Are you a fear money mind? Are you a happiness? Or are you a commitment? And it's good to know with your spouse, where are they? Because, for example, if one's a fear and one's a happiness, usually there's going to be some friction, because a happiness wants to spend all the time and a fear wants to save all the time. Does that make sense?
Totally. And for people who don't know what Carrie's talking about, in her book she goes through, you can figure out kind of your what emotion you connect with how you spend money. Do you hoard your money? Do you spend your money? And you can see, it's almost like kind of doing those like astrology matches, but you can see how you match with your partner. And it's a really nice basic way to say, okay, this is the kind of spender or saver I am.
Exactly. And I just think, I think most people who are getting married, I always say, you're not just marrying that person, you're marrying their money and you're marrying their money habits. So, you need to know up front, like you said, or like Dad said in the Wall Street Journal article, most marriages end either over money or infidelity or both. And so if you can have the money discussion with a professional before you get married so that you guys are on the same page, that's going to be one less thing that you're going to have a problem with.
My friends laugh at me. You know this, Carrie, but my husband started his own business about a year or so ago. And in January of a new year, we sit down and I have my husband make a spreadsheet presentation to me of the business and how we did, and we go over everything and what we put aside to pay our taxes and all of this. And I'm telling my best friend this, and she's like laughing at me, thinking like, you guys are ridiculous. I cannot tell you. We poured a glass of wine. It was on a Sunday evening. Took about 30 minutes, but it was one of the best things we did because, one, we got to look back at the year past and see how we did. It made us feel good that it was a good year. We had made a lot of progress in his first year in business. I was so happy for him that we had put aside appropriate money to cover our expenses, our taxes, and then we kind of like looked to the future. And what I thought could have been a really stressful conversation, and what I think a lot of people think will be a stressful conversation, for us was like a high five. We're good. We're on the same page. Let's check in, and we're going to try to do that every quarter just to make sure that we're both up to speed. And it was so helpful to us. I think it made my dad real proud too.
Yes, it's fabulous. I mean, that's what's going to keep your marriage strong, and the open communication about money is so important. I can't even stress it enough. I mean, I talk about it every day of my life because it's what I do for a living, but unfortunately money in a lot of situations is still a taboo, but it shouldn't be with your spouse.
No. I mean, look, people don't like talking about sex sometimes, but if you were having a sexual problem with your partner, you would address it, right? So like, why would you not address money? You should be able to talk about that too.
Exactly. Actually, you have to talk about it. I don't even, and especially, I mean, it causes so much stress in a marriage if, one person's spending and one person's saving and they're just not on the same page. It's just going to potentially cause, the marriage to fall apart maybe at some time if it's never addressed.
I want to talk to you about a couple other things besides marriage, but I do want to ask you one other thing because you brought this up. Prenup is good if you have assets going in. What if you end up in a marriage and all of a sudden you take off and your partner is lagging behind? You necessarily couldn't protect that earnings potential in a prenup, could you? Are there things you can do to make sure that you're not getting fleeced?
Unfortunately, there's not, because once you're married, it's supposed to be, even if one person's making $1 million and one person's making nothing, that's 50-50 because you're married.
Yeah.
So, whatever is brought to the marriage while you're married is a 50-50. Now, the one way to protect yourself, let's say you got an inheritance while you were married. You got $1 million inheritance. If you keep that $1 million separate from your spouse, meaning like just in an account in your name, believe it or not, will be considered outside the marriage.
Wow.
However, now this is the caveat. If you take that $1 million and you buy a piece of property or a house or something, and the two of you guys are on the name of the house, like in joint tenants, guess what? It's not. It's now a marital asset.
Got it. This is probably a problem I'm never gonna have, but should I come into some extra millions? Love my husband, but I'll keep it in my own account.
Like $10,000.
All right, so I want to talk about a couple of other things that you bring up in the book. I love that you talk about, are you a material girl? What do you mean by that when you ask women that question?
Yeah, so I think that women, for me, well, it's also a little pun or not a pun, but more of a nod to my Madonna from back in the day.
From the 80s, yes.
Back in the big 80s, exactly. That's a big 80s thing. Where, are you a material girl? What gives you satisfaction? Are you a happiness person who just wants to love spending their money and not even thinking about the future and not even thinking about, if I didn't spend that money now, how much is it going to be worth in the future? Where are you getting your happiness from and how are you spending your money? So that's are you a material girl? What
do you find, because I know you've talked about this too, women sometimes, we tend to behave in certain gender ways. Like we tend to approach our money have some kind of women related issues with money.
Yes.
What's going on with us? What's our problem?
Yes. Well, we have a lot of issues. We do. I'll go through a bunch of them. Okay. So unfortunately, we're less financially literate than men, which really upsets me, but it is true because, it's not an interesting topic to women. Women like to spend money. They don't want to talk about how to make it or grow it or save it or invest it.
Except for us, you and I love talking about that.
Right, I do too. That's why we get along so well. But I mean, it's just not a common female thing. When we go out with our girlfriends, even me, we talk about everything under the sun, but we don't really talk about how our 401k is invested.
Right.
It's just not a topic that we like to talk about. So we don't, and so that's one issue. Then we've got so many other gender issues, and, we work less than men because we're, caregiving. So we're out of the, working from either having kids or taking care of parents. So we work less. We make less because of the pay wage gap. We invest less because we're way more conservative and we're afraid of the stock market. We have, let's see what else.
Let's not forget, longer. I was just going to say, we live longer, so that's not a good combination.
Right. We live longer, so we need more money. So, it's and we have lower Social Security. So, we have all these strikes against us. And so women should be more interested in learning about this and taking care of themselves than less interested. So, I mean, that's my life's purpose, is to try to get people to wake up and say, hey, this is really important. I need to learn this.
What are some of the things I know you go through, and you can just give me the basics. It doesn't have to be super specific, but you talk about each decade of your life, kind of how you should be thinking about money. And I know you start in the 20s, and for a lot of people, the 20s are just a hard time to be saving. But how do you what should you be doing as you go through each kind of chapter of your life?
Sure. So in your 20s, I always say, this is when you're first starting out. So, it's your first independence. So couple things you need to do in your 20s is, make sure you pay off your student loans, start your 401k, even though, I have 20 somethings tell me I can't afford it. And I say you can't afford not to mention the fact that, let's say you've got a match. So you put in 3%, they put in 3%, you'll never lose the 3%. It's pre-tax. It's like, it's like 2% that you'll never miss. And then you have 6% going in over time. You up it every year. The next thing you know, you've got a nice little nest egg over time without even thinking about it. It's kind of like an automatic set it and forget it.
People overthink that 401k. It drives me nuts because, sure, maybe you can't afford to put in 10% right now. I get that.
Right.
That's a lot. I have never missed a penny that I put in my 401k, but you sure miss it when it's not there later on.
Absolutely. I mean, that's why I'm saying and I like the fact that we've switched to automatic enrollment now, where it used, that was a nice big change for the industry to get people automatically into it. So that's a good thing. So we've got that going on. Then, of course, also investing. I had my 21-year-old cousin call me and say, I just did my 401k. I put it in 100% cash. Is that okay? And I said, oh my God, did you not read my book? And she said, I did read your book. I said, go back and read the 20s chapter again. And so she did. And she came back to me and she says, does that mean I have to invest it? And I said, yes, it does.
But you know what? You bring up a great point, because that's another female thing. And you know that I'm into finances and I'm into investing, but I have a tendency to do that too sometimes, where you get a nice little pile of cash and I'd rather keep it in cash because we're always afraid to put it in the markets.
Exactly. Well, it's funny because, you don't put your emergency fund in the market. Right. But everything else that's a long term, greater than 10 years has to go in the market. No options. Anything. And I mean, I hold cash too. I know I'm just like my clients. I like to hold my cash. I mean, that's why I had all that big cash to pay for my divorce. It's like that It's a Wonderful Life. I'm saving this money for when I get a husband so I can get a divorce someday. Like the old lady, it was hysterical. I thought that was the best line in the movie. But anyway, that was me. I was saving for my divorce. But now I still hold a lot of cash as my emergency because that's my emergency fund. But everything else should be invested. Okay. So that's my 20s. Okay, so 30s, you want to talk about the not overspending for a house calculator?
Yeah, I love this because 30s really are a time when people start thinking about maybe making their first purchase. Some people are delaying it, but you might be married. Let's talk about this because this is a biggie.
Yes. So this is super important because people don't know what they don't know, and they don't know how much they should be spending on a home. And, I would not trust the real estate agent to give me that information. No. Nothing wrong with the real estate agent. It's just, they're going to tell you to buy the most expensive house you can afford because, that's it. I am super conservative. And the CFP, when you have a CFP, the CFP board is super conservative. And this is the calculation that we use. And also banks used to use this, and they're using it now again in underwriting. Again, super conservative. I would always err on the side of super conservative when it comes to buying a home. So, for example, you take your gross income. So let's say you're a couple. So your gross income, let's say, is $100,000.
And for people who don't know what gross income is.
Gross income is what you both make. So like, one person makes 50, the other person makes 50. So I'm combining those two. Mm-hmm. So that's 100,000. Dividing it by 12, and then timesing it by 0.28. And so in that case, if I make $100,000 as a joint couple, I can afford $2,333 a month. That is principal, interest, taxes, and insurance. And I wouldn't go over that number.
And you're basing this, when you say gross, it's your combination, it's your income before you pay taxes.
Correct.
Okay. So, and you should stick to that number if you can.
You should stick to that number or lower if you can. And then you'll never have a problem making your mortgage payments. And also, when I say principal, interest, taxes, and insurance, that means you're not going for a negative amortization loan or an interest-only loan, which is how we got into the financial crisis problems in the first place. Back in 2000, and I guess it was from 2003 to 2007, before the credit crisis and before the financial crisis, anybody could get a mortgage for anything. You didn't even need, they had what they called ninja loans, no income, no assets, no check, no credit. And anybody could get anything for whatever they wanted. And then everybody would say, well, it doesn't matter. You can refinance when the loan resets. And then, of course, they couldn't refinance because the house went down in value and they have no income, no assets, no credit.
Right.
So then they lost the house. And that's where we were, almost 10 years ago.
So even though being able to have access to money is great in theory, what should people be looking for when they're getting a mortgage? You don't want to just be paying off the interest.
Right. I just don't like interest only mortgages. Unless you have a specific purpose where you're only going to be there for a really short amount of time, or you're going to get a huge bonus or windfall or something where you're going to pay it down. Other than that, I really don't understand why, if you're going to stay in the home, you really should do traditional, maybe let's say, I don't know, either 723, which is, fixed for 7 years, and then adjustable, or just a plain 15-year fixed or a 30-year fixed.
Okay. Good for people to know, because I know sometimes they say, okay, I'm going to get a mortgage, and then all these things swirl, and I have no idea what any of these mean.
Right. It's a very important financial decision that should not be taken lightly. And you should also seek some help with it.
Yeah.
I wouldn't ask the mortgage broker, and I wouldn't ask the real estate agent, because they're not, CFPs, and, they're really not looking out for your long-term financial health.
Right. Your certified financial planner, your accountant, your advisor, those are the people who want to see your money in the bank. So that's a big thing to do in your 30s. Are there other things people should be thinking about in their 30s?
Well, it's, maybe getting married too. A lot of people get married in their 30s, and then, talking about, which is what we were talking about earlier about combining your financial health and what does that look like, and, all the things that go along with that. Before you walk down the aisle, I have a whole section in the book of, what to do before you walk down the aisle together.
What about in your 40s?
So 40s is interesting, depending on where, again, all these life stages, sometimes things happen in their 30s, 40s, 50s. Some of these are fluid, So, but for example, I think 40s is a lot of time for reinvention. So I've had a lot of clients go out on their own and become their own boss in their 40s. I've had people who are empty nesters in their 40s and then lose all their kids and have to figure out, now what do? Do I go back to work as a woman? And career relaunch and things like that, going back into the workforce. I've had people get divorced in their 40s. I feel like the 40s is a time maybe of a little bit of reinvention. So it's kind of an interesting decade because a lot of moving parts in your 40s.
What about your 50s?
So 50s, you are getting to peak earning years in your 50s. And you also get to do an extra catch-up contribution in your 50s. But what's interesting in your 50s is your parents are aging. So in your 50s, your parents are, in their, 70s or 80s or maybe even 90s, depending on, when they had you. And so, you also have to deal, that's a huge issue for most people. And it usually hits you in your 50s of, what to do with your aging parents. It's a huge issue. Are they going to move in with you? Do they have long-term care? Who's going to take care of them if something happens? It's a big issue in your, for you to deal with.
And it can be expensive.
And, and it was ironically, sometimes in the 50s, you also are sandwich generation. You have your parents to deal with, and you also still have your kids, either in college or moving back with you.
Yeah, so it's a lot.
Hopefully not, but you have that as well. And then also in your 50s is a good time for you to buy long-term care for yourself, also because you'll be having this conversation with your parents.
Just for people who don't know what the catch-up contribution is, can you talk about that?
Oh, sure. So a catch-up contribution is when you are over 50, the government says you can put more money away in your IRA or your 401k or 403b, so you can put more money away pre-tax. So the amount goes up. It's about $5,500 higher on the retirement side, and I think and $1,000 higher on the IRA side. So you just get to put away more money pre-tax.
And Carrie's advice would be?
Max it out.
I love it. All right, I know a lot of people, we live in this society where we're so afraid to get older and, we all want to be young forever. But I love that you refer to your 60s as a time to celebrate. If you have done all the financial work throughout your life, this should be a good time, right?
It should. It really should. You know what? If you were diligent for the 40 years leading up to, from 20s to 60s, you have 40 years of doing the right thing with money. 60s is your time to celebrate. It's the smooth 60s. If you didn't do anything in your 20s and now you got to do it for 40 years from 30 to 70, then you'll have your smooth 70s. So it's just a matter of having the time, because the most important thing with financial planning is time. Mm-hmm. Time is on your side. So the more time you have, the easier it is to get this right. Unfortunately, the less time you have, if you didn't do anything by the time you're 70,
yeah,
you're running out of time to get it right. So, in your 60s is the time, if you did everything right, communicate with your beneficiaries, figure out, what you want to do when you're retired. Do you want to downsize? Do you want to stay where you are? How much you want to spend? Do you want to pass on your assets to charity, to your kids? Mm-hmm. There's all these fabulous charitable options when you get to that point about, that are win-win-win, where you save money, the charity gets money, and you get money back on taxes. So I love those. Mm-hmm. So you've got a lot of options. And then, of course, unfortunately, another thing with women is that a lot of women become widows because we live longer. So you have a higher probability of becoming a widow in your 60s, 70s, or 80s. So then what do you do when that happens?
Mm-hmm. It's a lot to think about.
It is.
Now, one thing I want to make sure that you tell people, and I want people to know about you, because, you always hear this advice from financial planners, and there are these people who tell you to save, and never spend, and a lot of people think like, oh, what a boring life that is. One of the things I love about you, Carrie, is you're financially savvy, but you enjoy your life.
Yes. So, and it's funny, it did take me a while to get here. Mm-hmm. I would say I didn't enjoy it as much in my 20s and 30s. Because I was so ridiculously diligent. And I would say to myself, I actually still beat myself up over this. I missed a trip with my girlfriends in my 20s to go to Mardi Gras, because I said to myself, it's going to cost me $2,000. And I couldn't wrap my head around that $2,000 today is going to be worth $30,000 in the future. So I can't afford a trip that's going to cost me $30,000 in the future. And I didn't go. And I regret it to this day. So, there's a balance of what we call, in my company, we call it your one best financial life. So, you can't just hoard your money all the time and then not enjoy it. You have to have a balance of saving, spending, enjoying, life, because you don't have forever. So you can't put off today just for, your future outcome, because what if you never make it? What if something happens? What if you pass before that happens? So you really need to have a balance of enjoying and spending now, as well as saving for the future.
If you can, get that great handbag, but put way more in your 401k.
Yes.
Carrie, thank you so much. This was awesome. We love talking to you. Let's give one more plug to the book. It is called
The Money Queen's Guide for Women Who Want to Build Wealth and Banish Fear.
Amazing. And you are a certified financial planner based in the New York area. So if people are looking for one, they should reach out.
Absolutely.
And it's just good. I mean, whether they're coming to you or coming to someone, it is great to have someone to bounce off financial ideas and get some good advice.
Absolutely. Everybody needs it. It's a gift to yourself. I mean, you should, I think it should be universal for everyone. Unfortunately, right now it's not, and it should be.
And I know one thing you told me too that people should know, even if you think maybe you can't afford to hire a financial planner right now, most of them will take a phone call or even just chat with you to see your situation for free, right? They'll take a consulting call. So maybe just try making that call and see if it's worth it for you.
Exactly. Yes. I mean, almost everyone I know will at least take an initial meeting for free.
So it's free. You have no reason. You have no reason not to try it.
Exactly.
Carrie, thank you so much. It's always a pleasure to talk to you.
Thank you.
Morris on Money is a production of the Fox 5 Podcast Network. I'm your host, Allison Morris. This episode was recorded, edited, and mixed by Matt Onimus with a little help from John Corrales on Skype. Ahmad Asghar, Matt Onimus, and Allison Morris are our executive producers. Our vice president at Fox 5 News is Byron Harmon. Lou Leone is our vice president and general manager. Thanks so much, and stay tuned for the next episode of Morris on Money. In the meantime, you can catch me on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, all at Allison M. Fox 5. And you can always find great Fox 5 content on our YouTube page. That's youtube.com/Fox5NY. And for more from Carrie, head to her website, moneyqueenguide.com.